into your power or speaking your truth or saying no, and somebody reacted badly towards you, or somebody was passive aggressive, or somebody was judgy, any of that? If you have, you might have been a person in that moment and now who was stepping more fully into your power and your light. And guess what? The charge of your light bothered them. Hi everyone, my name is Becc Sahasrara. Thank you for being here. I want to speak to you, particularly if you are a woman in a leadership position in your life or just in your business, if you're a woman on your purpose, if you're a woman of spirituality or magic, and if you're coming into your feminine power. You and I both know that there has been experiences in your life, probably subtle and big, probably as long as you can remember and ones you can't even remember, where you were made to feel smaller. Or rather, perhaps, you made yourself small in the face of other people's reactions, in the face of other people's bigness, in the face of other people taking up space. If that resonates with you at all, keep listening. The feminine has undergone many, many years of what we could call persecution or oppression. There was a time, and still today in remnants, of the masculine becoming tyrannical. Tyranny is a form of oppression against somebody by overruling, by dominating, by having excessive force and control. Tyranny is the right word if you've ever had a partner who was abusive towards you. Tyranny is the right word if you had a father who did not allow you to speak or to have your own desires or needs, or they were made wrong. These are the ingredients to create a daughter, a child, and then a woman who is afraid of her own power, who is afraid of coming into her bigness and coming into her fullness, her full aliveness, her full voice, her full expression, her full embodiment of who she truly is. It is the ingredients for somebody who is going to live their life in a way where they shrink back when others take up space. That could be in a very negative, tyrannical, or dominating way, or that could be simply when you are next to somebody, even another woman, who is just very confident. You might find yourself sinking back or letting them take opportunity. The feminine has been doing this practice of inner self-persecution and inner containment and inner tyranny as a means of keeping herself safe. For many, many years, this was what worked to keep yourself safe. When you were a full priestess or a full witch, or you were a matriarch, or you were, a feminine monarch, even the feminine monarchs, you were diminished and things could be taken from you if you were not in the box that was offered to you. So in your day-to-day life now, and in your childhood traumas as well, which also mirror now, you are going to be living through the energetic debris of that and the inner programming of that. And as I say, this is what we do, is that we bring it inside. We take over that job of the male persecutor and we bring it inside. And also persecution, of course, is not limited, and tyranny is not limited to male energies or influences in your life. This can also be, as I say, women carrying it inside, and then say a narcissistic mother doing it to their daughter. A narcissist sort of swings to the other pendulum where they, I guess, they feel deeply small, and so they overcompensate and they overcontrol to try to alleviate that. But their actual truth is that they're in their smallness. So we can have women as well who can act in this way, but women tend to do it not so much It's not that it can't, but more often they're not going to be dominating and tyrannical. They're going to be diminishing and demeaning and critical and on the extreme end narcissistic and cruel in order to create a smallness effect. But tyranny and that sort of diminishing, it has the same effect of oppression, of you ending up in a smaller version of yourself. When we talk about a smaller version of yourself, we're talking about saying yes when you mean no. We're talking about not shining your light, like not getting up on stage if there was an opportunity offered to you. We're talking about, especially within boundaries, not being honest about your boundaries. So also standing in your truth, holding your truth, and letting your boundaries be crossed in that way and saying, no, that's fine. Or not pushing back at all when somebody does something that you don't like. When we are doing this to ourselves, where it's smallness because you're shoving down another part of yourself. And there's a really interesting energy that the feminine contains within her that is really on the sort of masculine injury. Again, we love men here. We're talking about toxic men particularly, okay? Nobody needs to get triggered in the comments about this. So when women are in their full power, things happen because of the nature of what a feminine energy or essence, a woman is. She has as one of the core components of her, she has an amazing power to be like a vortex, to be like a seducting force, simply meaning pulling inwards. She has a vortex inside of her womb. She is the living vortex of the mother. She is a living portal. Okay, and that portal is to higher light. So because she has that capacity, and because of the nature of duality, the law of attraction and how these things come together, polarity, when a woman is in her full power, her full force, her full feminine force, and we could call that as concentrated in the womb, this is quite alive and activated. And so the unhealthy men can have a reaction to this where they are actually, usually this is unconscious, they're actually afraid of that. That is what they're afraid of. Because if they weren't afraid of it and they were surrendered to it and in trust with it, and not replaying trauma from many eons ago, and projecting it onto the women today, they would understand that by surrendering to the feminine vortex, the feminine force, the feminine portal, they can receive essentially an ego death that allows them to become more fully alivened into who they truly are. It can give as a medicine. And this is what a lot of some of the sex rituals that were done many sort of iterations of Earth ago, the priestesses would do sex magic with the men to give to them from their core, from their womb space where the holy nectar begins to drip down and then, pass through the yoni, etc. This holy elixir and this transmission, or I want to say the word suction, like this pulling in of anything that is not them, it is pulled in to die into the void space of the womb and then be reborn. Then they are reborn through the womb, the vortex, the feminine force, as a version of themselves that has gone through a death and shed that past version. So now they are a better being and they are more expressed in their full power. There are also lots of other transmissions, depending on your intention, that could be done with feminine and masculine sex magic. But men were given a lot of the, just a healing for their ego death, or perhaps they would be given more access to their own heart through times when men were less connected to their heart and they really needed help with that. There were Venusian hybrid women, let's say, who were there to offer that. And these are what we would perceived as like the nymphs in the forest. And I have very clear memories of this, and the way that it was, and the way that it was an innocence and a gift, and we came to give this gift. And what happened eventually is that because the men would sort of lose their ego and in that sacred dance and sacred sex, I mean, it was good and they really received from it. But at a certain point, they started to become afraid of it. The way that they became weakened, they perceived it as being weakened. And they started to perceive it as manipulation. And they made up stories like, you have the power to control the weather and you crashed my ship. And this is where the mythology of a siren in the sea comes from. A siren seductress, and that's why that word is like a, seductress in a demeaning way, word used today. And I remember being like, what are they like? Such an innocence. Like, what are they talking? Like, oh my goodness. Like, we were just being we weren't doing any of that. Of course, we weren't controlling the weather, and we were just being. And it was meant to be good. And the feeling of persecution within that, the feeling quality or the tone of this example is one that you may have felt in yourself when you go through an experience where someone has painted you as bad or wrong, or like, the villain or the enemy, when you actually were not being that way. And you were essentially demonized. And this happens more for women who are in their full power because of this reason, this old, very, very old, unconscious, traumatic replaying that's happening. And for women, we coped by getting like angry and, in the feminist movement, and swinging to like, let's reject the masculine, and having all this lack of forgiveness for their tyranny and which was rooted in their fear. And it's actually on us, and it's on you to free yourself from this replaying inner persecution. The way that it comes out in your adult relationships is likely that when somebody paints you as in this way and you feel that sense of persecution, you defend yourself and you're like, no, you're wrong. Or you get really upset inside and you like have your own emotional reaction of being sad or angry or betrayed and all these things. Whereas the more aligned whole response would be that you already have a sense of security inside yourself and that you know who you are. So if somebody says stuff like that to you, your reaction is just going to be like, what? Like, no. Okay, bye. Like, you're just going to be neutral about it. When we've really moved past something and we're not triggered about stuff. If you're triggered, it's because there's a part of you that is potentially believing at least a part of their projection. Like, you can only be activated into a wounding like, oh, I'm bad, and feeling like that yucky feeling of shame and persecution or badness or guilt, or just like being upset that you've been painted as a villain. You can only feel that if you're triggered by it, and you can only be triggered by it if you have a negative belief swimming around in there that's been mirrored or activated from this event. And you need to go back in time with yourself and heal that part of yourself. It's important for women to understand this dynamic because you need to come home to the neutrality. And I'm going to look at my notes here because this is like actually Isis asked me to speak about, particularly about the persecution of the empowered feminine today. And I think I've covered most of it. She's saying to recognize this neutrality and find freedom through the neutrality. Neutrality will happen naturally when you utilize what happens. Like, say you get triggered, you use it as a like, aha, a doorway. Hooray, I can now see this, so I can now go heal it. So go heal it, clear it, and then you will become more and more neutral the more you heal. Her point was also that our freedom. Okay, so when you feel persecuted or oppressed as women, particularly women who have stepped into their power, may feel, when you feel that hit back and that friction with other people, you actually need to come into a space of alignment within yourself. You need to come into this space of I've cleared this, and now I know that that is not about me. It just is. Like, they are just replaying their trauma, and I was just here. Like, I was just here. And they just needed something to project onto. Their psyche did. And so they did. It literally has no reflection or comment on you. And yeah, we seek this sense of freedom instead of feeling persecuted and oppressed. Instead of finding that alignment inside of ourselves and making yourself free, we try to free ourselves of the painted picture by going to the other person and defending them and trying to get them to see and trying to get them to agree that no, like, you know, I'm good and it's fine. And or I didn't mean it that way, or like, you know, whatever defense that you have, which is probably the truth. You try to get to see them the truth instead of creating freedom within yourself and recognizing that you could only vibrationally attract that experience because you've co-created it, because inside of you is living something unhealed that says I'm a villain, I'm bad, that persecution wound. So the freedom is not trying to get the men, like toxic men or whoever it is, narcissistic mothers, sister wounds, whoever. It's not in getting them to see, it's in getting yourself to awaken to the fact that you have the power to heal it, and getting yourself to see that you are good. Removing this injury that is likely something like I'm bad, I'm wrong, and it likely comes from childhood trauma and also potentially past life trauma. And that's going to create your freedom. There is no point. It is only wasted energy and your feminine potency and your feminine force and truth and magnetism to waste time defending yourself to somebody who's already decided on like who they think you are. Now, this is different. There's nuance to this. Obviously, if there was just like a simple miscommunication or something, or there's certain circumstances where it might be right to offer explanation. But let's say you do that and you are not received. What is the point in trying to continue other than you're trying to actually like repair that inner wound inside? You're actually trying to convince yourself that you're good here. And maybe like your long lost parents, and we do a thing with our trauma where we try to resolve in new relationships. And no, it's just a waste of your energy. So the feminine power and your magnetism, your potency is when you concentrate it into like only you, and bringing that anything external is an invitation, opportunity for you to go inwards and do your priestess alchemy and magic. And it's so, so important. And the last part about this is about self-protection, boundaries, and self-love. So what I noticed in my journey that I want to share with you is self-love became like actually a really tangible, like more than just a concept. Like I could really feel like, no, I actually do love myself. And when I would say I love you, for example, like really feel it and really mean it and really care about myself, that came in when I started much more fully actually honoring my boundaries and having boundaries and making sure they are followed through, and in that way being my own self-protector. You will feel loved by you when you feel protected by you, when you feel like you have you have follow through within yourself, that you can trust you, that you've got your back, that you can trust you to know what your boundaries are, to speak them, and to assure that they are honored. And, you know, where boundaries can't be honored, that's where the boundary for you is to remove yourself from that space. When we don't follow through with our boundaries, or we cross them, usually because of we're again replaying childhood things where it felt safer to just agree with people and stuff like that. And usually it's because you're afraid of the other person's reaction. When we cross our boundaries, we create a self-violation or a self-trust injury. We feel like every time you do that, you break a little bit of trust with yourself. And then we also have to go on a journey of self-forgiveness when we come into really embodying this more and trying to love ourselves. You have to forgive yourself for the way that you probably have done that many times in your life out of that primal survival instinct, which may come again from this life or from past lifetimes where, women would just, be agreeable or lie or, appeasing in order to keep themselves alive and keep themselves safe in situations where we were hunted, etc. Many eons ago. This can still live in your auric field, I guess, as imprints. There can be energetic debris, especially within the womb space. A lot of women, there's like kind of like a decay or a, what's the word? No, like a deadness is what I want to say. Like, and again, remembering I say deadness because it really is quite like that. However, it's like a dead volcano in that you could say it's like dormant. I think that's a better word, like where they're really long-term dormant. It's that one. And it means that there is always the chance for resurrection. And you are here to resurrect this power within yourself. And you go through these cycles of self-evolution and regaining your strength through being triggered and all of that because you are slowly opening up to that power of life within you. And that power of life within you, when it's activated, will resurrect you into your fullest self. And this is the path of the priestess or of the Isis, of the feminine force, is to really go through death processes and go through rebirth. And then that becomes your medicine that you can give others as well. It's really quite amazing. So I'm just looking at my notes here. Yeah, Isis really wants you to understand that in order to be the leader that you came here to be, especially again, if you are a spiritual entrepreneur, if you are a coach and you're a woman, if you are a coach who just dabbles in intuition, or if you're a full-blown priestess, magic woman, you must be able to operate from this place of power. You are going to trigger people. You are going to just your field activates other people and it brings up their demons, and then those demons try to attack you because what's happening is they're being invited to die under your light, and in their dying they're resisting and it's painful. And if they're not the kind of person who can really hold themselves and have self-awareness to know that's what's happening and it's not about you, and own their projections and stuff like that, you're going to trigger the crap out of everybody. And this is definitely something that I went through in my life, especially when I got more power back in myself, when I started standing up for myself more, when I started doing better in business and sharing that and teaching about that on social media. The amount of negative energy that was coming my way, I was like, what the fuck? And it was because, part of some people were, wanting to stay in a different place than I was now as I grew. And if you're a spiritual entrepreneur or leader, you know that you're in your service and your business, you're under a constant evolution. You evolve and then you give your gifts. You evolve and then you give your gifts. And sometimes your audience, some of them may not be able to meet you there and they may have a reaction to it. So this is again where psychic and energetic protection really becomes important on that bigger scale, and also in your primary relationships. And the thing with psychic protection and energetic protection is that it's going to reflect your capacity to, the way that you hold your boundaries and stuff. So if you have psychologically and on the physiological realm, if you have good self-love and self-boundaries, and you regularly protect yourself in that way in relationship and in communication, and you speak your truth and you follow through and you support yourself, your energy field is going to be stronger and you're going to have that protection inbuilt quite well. But if you have weak spots, that's going to be that weak spot that's going to be reflected in your energetic field. And that's where things like psychic attack and stuff, that can only happen. You can only be affected by it if you have a weak spot, meaning you have a vibrational match to the psychic attack, which is again is the same as somebody projecting onto you like you're bad or whatever. It's all the same thing. It's all mirroring and projection. If you have a part of you that deep down in her trauma, like somewhere picked up the belief that she agrees with that belief that's being projected onto you, or the pain that's being projected onto you, she will take that on, and you'll have this weak spot and you'll need to deal with the negative energy. And yeah, it's again an opportunity, just like in a personal relationship, an opportunity for you to see that wound and mend that wound, and then essentially choose better relationships. And I mean, if you're like, a leader on social media or just in your job or in your life, you can't stop people. None of us can stop people from having that, what's the word, like persecution towards you and your power. What you can do is build yourself up vibrationally, emotionally, psychologically, so that you are not affected. And the more that you do that, and also do not engage, and in that way it becomes neutralized and you create that inner freedom inside, the more powerful you become. The more you concentrate your energy, the more you focus just on you, the more magnetic and powerful you become. And then that expresses itself in our lives is as our self-love and confidence and simple magnetic attraction, like power, like you attract things more easily. People are more moved by your healing, like electrical power. So this thing with the feminine and the persecution is so important, okay? And it is something that we are here to shed at this time. You don't need to keep that anymore, that identity or that belief of like, I'm bad or evil, or like I shouldn't be big and I should hide, or I shouldn't be seen, I shouldn't be heard, that person's better than me. All these different ways that it shows up, and you're still persecuting yourself. And certainly if somebody like a tyrannical man on the extreme is like persecuting you, you remove yourself, you stop that. No, the feminine in her power is so powerful and like pure. There's a purity to it. There's a purity to the priestess who is really embodying this, who has cleared these things away. And it is such a gift that everybody ideally would be open to receive. But if they are not ready for you, you just walk away, you don't continue. And yeah, so thank you for listening. I want to invite you though. This is a really cool thing that I've decided we're doing. It is called the Unstoppable Priestess. It is a live training, a live magic training in how to come into this full feminine force, how to come into this power that leads to more confidence and your truth and your voice fully expressed, which leads you to being a better leader for yourself and going to the next level and attracting the things that you want in your life, in your business, in your soul purpose, and in your psychic intuitive power. I want to train you and invite you how to touch this and how to get a handle on it and really live it. This is on the 6th of September. There's going to be a link below. And thank you so much for joining me. Please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe on this channel. Share this video with your friends, especially your sisters, men and women. Share this with the women. And I will see you in the next video.